All right, I'm going to start with Joshua 14, but first I'm going to pray. Yahweh, all the preparation in the world that we can make, all the discipline and training in walking in righteousness, no matter what we do, we're not going to meet your mark until you perfect us one day. I just ask, Yahweh, that even the words that I speak today, that ultimately they would be yours. Whatever shines through is from your spirit. In the same way as when we pray and we don't have the words to say, that your spirit speaks on our behalf. Do the same thing even when we do have words to say, that the words that shine through are still yours. Open up our ears to your word, Yahweh, and speak to us whatever you want us to hear. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen. All right, so chapter 14. This is the inheritance beyond the Jordan. So at this point in the story, we now have the conquest of the land of Canaan taking place. The people of Israel are receiving the first of their portions within this part of the land, as promised. It was a long and difficult journey to get to this point, and the work is not yet over, not even close. I'm going to read the first 5 verses. Now these are the territories which the sons of Israel inherited in the land of Canaan, which Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun and the heads of the households of the tribes of the sons of Israel apportioned to them for an inheritance, by the lot of their inheritance as Yahweh commanded, by the hand of Moses, for the 9 tribes and the half-tribe. For Moses had given the inheritance of the 2 tribes and the half-tribe beyond the Jordan, but he did not give an inheritance to the Levites among them. For the sons of Joseph were 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim, and they did not give a portion to the Levites in the land, except cities to live in, with their pasture lands for their livestock and for their property. Thus the sons of Israel did just as Yahweh had commanded Moses, and they divided the land. So the first question is, why are Eleazar and Joshua the ones who distributed the land? And I'll give you one simple reason, which is because Yahweh said so. Numbers 34, verses 15 through 17. The 2.5 tribes have received their inheritance across the Jordan, opposite Jericho, to the east toward the sunrise. That would be Gad, Reuben, and half of Manasseh, and 2.5 tribes. Then Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, These are the names of the men who shall apportion the land to you for inheritance: Eleazar, the priest, and Joshua, the son of Nun. So Joshua, if you know who he is, if you've been tracking with the story thus far, he's the successor to Moses as their leader, and he shares the same name as Yeshua. Eleazar is the son of Aaron and the current high priest. So here in Joshua 14:1 it says, the territories which the sons of Israel inherited in the land of Canaan. So verse 3, which I just read, we have Gad, Reuben, and half of Manasseh receiving territory beyond the Jordan, east of the Jordan River. However, the Levites did not, nor will they receive territory like the remaining 9.5 tribes that settled west of the Jordan, but they will get an inheritance. How did Eleazar and Joshua distribute the land? I'll let someone answer that real quick. It tells you. Yep. By lots. By the lot of their inheritance, it says. And I couldn't find anything concrete. I'm not sure either any of you could either. And nor does it seem like there's a clear agreement on what exactly casting lots is, but it does seem to be simply leaving the decision in the hands of Yahweh. These 2 men facilitated the distribution of the land, but the decision was still Yahweh's. They were simply there out of obedience. Yahweh makes the declaration, and our job is to listen and obey. And what's taken place over the last few chapters, it's easy to forget something. And that is, this is more than a conquest and a destruction of wicked pagan nations so that the children of Israel have a place to call home. It is that. I'm not going to dismiss that. It's definitely that too, and for a very good reason. But this is also directly tied to the promises that Yahweh had made when he established his covenant with Abraham. Genesis 12:5 through 7 says, So Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions which they had accumulated, and the persons which they had acquired in Haran. And they departed to go forth to the land of Canaan. Thus they came to the land of Canaan. And Abram passed through the land as far as the site of Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. Now the Canaanite was then in the land. Then Yahweh appeared to Abram and said, To your seed I will give this land. So he built an altar there to Yahweh, who had appeared to him. Then a few chapters later, in Genesis 15, we see another layer to this promise that he made. In verse 13, it says, Then God said to Abram, Know for certain that your seed will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and they will be enslaved and mistreated 400 years. And this is referring to when they were enslaved in Egypt. But I will also judge the nation to whom they are enslaved, Egypt, and afterward they will come out with many possessions, which they did. As for you, Abraham, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You will be buried at a good old age. Then in the fourth generation they will return here, the land of Canaan, for the iniquity of the Amorite is not yet complete. The children of Israel have a land that they will inherit as a result of the covenant that Yahweh made with Abraham, which includes the land of Canaan. The land that they were in for 400 years was not their land, the land of Egypt. They were sojourners and slaves. And despite all their complaining in Egypt, and even complaining once out of Egypt and in the wilderness, they were complaining even to the point of wanting to go back. And here's the thing, there's nothing to go back to. It's not their land. Even their old master, Pharaoh, was killed when that Red Sea closed shut. So keep that in mind when tempted to go back to your old life before Yeshua. That's not yours. It's full of wickedness that, if it's full of wickedness that Yahweh hates, you're choosing to go down with it. Remember Lot's wife. Genesis 19. As they were fleeing Sodom and Gomorrah, they were permitted to escape, but were instructed to run for their lives and not look back, because God's wrath was raining down on that land for its abominations. Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Here in Joshua, we see that Yahweh is making good on his promises, but we also see that it serves a dual purpose of dealing with sin and defilement in the land. The same process of bringing you further into this walk with Yahweh is the same process that puts sin and bondage to death. So you can't desire Yahweh's goodness and yet also want to hold on to sin. One of the first things that God did in creation was separate light from dark. Leviticus 18, verse 24 through 28. So, do not defile yourself by any of these things, for all these the nations which I am casting out before you have become defiled. So the land has become defiled, and I have brought its punishment upon it, and the land has vomited out its inhabitants. But as for you, you shall keep my statutes and my judgments, and shall not do any of these abominations, neither the native nor the sojourner who sojourns among you. For the men of the land who have been before you have done all these abominations, and the land has become defiled, so that the land will not vomit you out, should you defile it, as it has vomited out the nation which has been before you. So let's get into talking about who Joseph is for a minute. Because in verses 3 through 5, I'll read that first. For Moses had given the inheritance of the 2 tribes and the half tribe beyond the Jordan, but he did not give an inheritance to the Levites among them. For the sons of Joseph were two tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim. And they did not give a portion to the Levites in the land, except cities to live in, with their pasture lands for their livestock and for their property. A reminder, they did get something. Thus the sons of Israel did just as Yahweh had commanded Moses, and they divided the land. So there's a lot here. Joseph receives his inheritance through his sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. In Genesis 48, Joseph's father, Jacob, also known as Israel, adopted Joseph's sons, so that they would each receive an inheritance as one of Jacob's sons. In verses 5 through 6, in Genesis 48, this is Jacob talking to his son, Joseph. So now, your two sons, who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt, are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, as Reuben and Simeon are. But your kin, your Joseph, your kin that have been born after them, those will be yours. They shall be called by the names of their brothers in their inheritance. And as weird as this might sound, where Joseph's own sons are by some technicality now his brothers, also become a means for Joseph to receive two portions, double portion. Instead of just the tribe of Joseph getting an inheritance, by his sons he receives a double portion, one through Ephraim and one through Manasseh. So, let's continue to expand on who Joseph is. He's the first son of Rachel, wife of Jacob. He's one of the sons of Israel. Genesis 30, verses 22 through 24. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. So she conceived and bore a son, and said, God has taken away my reproach. And she named him Joseph, saying, May Yahweh give me another son. And then according to Genesis 37, verses 3 through 4, Joseph's father, Jacob, loved him more than all his brothers, and as a result they hated him. He was favored by his father and hated by his own brothers. He has a number of prophetic dreams that showed his brothers and even his parents bowing down to him. And then Genesis 37, verse 14 says, Joseph's father tells him, Now go and see about the welfare of your brothers and the welfare of the flock, and bring word back to me. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. So we have this hated but favored brother Joseph, who was conceived through miraculous circumstances. His mom's womb was opened. By his birth, his mother sees the birth of her Redeemer. This Joseph, to whom the other descendants of his father Jacob, his very own brothers, fellow children of Israel, will bow down to. He's sent by his father to check up on his brothers and the flock. When his father sends him, he responds with, Hineni, here I am. This is the same response Abraham gives to Yahweh, Hineni, here I am, after Yahweh tells him to go sacrifice Isaac. So this is a statement of obedience even to the point of death. His brothers did plot to kill him. They strip him of his clothes, and they sell him for silver. As a result of this plot to destroy him, Joseph's given position and authority while in Egypt, and is used by God to provide a type of salvation to the people from the coming famine. His own brothers, who are fellow children of Jacob, aka Israel, seek out this salvation from this famine and are initially blind to the fact that he's their own brother. Though deserving of vengeance for what they did to him, they are met with grace and blessings, which should sound familiar. But in case it's not, Yeshua was the one hated and rejected by his brothers, fellow Jews, without cause. Yet he was the beloved Son in whom the Father was well pleased. That's Matthew 3:17. He was sent by his Father from Hebron, of all places, from where the Abrahamic covenant was established. Matthew 1:1, to seek the welfare, the shalom of his brothers and the sheep. Yeshua is from the tribe of Judah, who came to his brothers, the Jews, and for the lost sheep of Israel. John 1:1, he came to what was his own, and those who were his own did not receive him. Matthew 15:24. But he, Yeshua, answered and said, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So like Joseph, Yeshua left his position of privilege, the glory he had with his father, to go to his brothers. Philippians 2:6-8. Who, although existing in the form of God, did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form of a slave, by being made in the likeness of men, being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Like Joseph's brothers who plotted to kill him, the Pharisees, chief priests, the elders of the people plotted to kill Yeshua. Joseph's brothers stripped him of the robe he got from his father. Yeshua was stripped of his garments, and they cast lots for them. Joseph was betrayed by his own brothers and sold into slavery for 20 shekels of silver. Judas betrayed Yeshua in exchange for 30 pieces of silver, not 20. But here's the thing about that, the 30 pieces. It's the same amount paid as a retribution for a slave who has been gored to death by an ox, according to Exodus 21:32. How would an ox gore someone to death? The horns pierced. So Yeshua is the one betrayed by one of his own for silver, sold out for the cost of a slave that's been pierced and killed. Joseph's brothers intended on destroying him, and Yahweh used that to rescue them from the coming famine. Through the very act intended to destroy Yeshua, his death on the cross, he was exalted back to God the Father, seated at his right hand, just like Joseph was at the right hand of Pharaoh. And Yeshua is the means of redemption for all who come to him. Genesis 48:14. But Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, crossing his hands, although Manasseh was the firstborn. So now we're talking about the sons of Joseph. And his papa puts his hands out to bless the children like this. And Joseph's thinking, wait a minute, Dad, that's not right. You're putting the right hand on the wrong child, the wrong son who's not the oldest. So even though Manasseh was the firstborn and should have received the greater portion, his younger brother Ephraim's the one receiving the greater blessing. Joseph tries to correct his dad, but his father refused and said, this is Genesis 48:19, I know, my son, I know. He also will become a people, and he also will be great. However, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become the fullness of nations. Jacob then pronounces a blessing over Joseph's sons, then says directly to Joseph, behold, I am about to die. How convenient to know that. But God will be with you and bring you back to the land of your fathers. The next statement he makes is interesting. Why is it interesting? I'm glad you asked. Genesis 48:22. And I give you one portion, Shechem, more than your brothers, which I took from the hand of the Amorite with my sword and my bow. And here's what's going on here. Jacob buys a plot of land in Shechem. Genesis 33. Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, violates Jacob's daughter, Dinah. Genesis 34. Simeon and Levi deceive and slaughter the men of Shechem in revenge. Genesis 34. Jacob rebukes them for their violent vengefulness, and we'll hear the consequences of this when Papa Jacob gathers his sons. In Genesis 49, we have Jacob being summoning his sons and saying, gather together that I may tell you what will befall you in the last days. So Joseph gets his blessing from his dad, and then he goes and he gathers the rest of his sons and gives them their blessings as well. Or he tells them what's going to happen. It's part of they're being told what the will is going to entail for them. And we know who normally gets the double portion of blessings when it comes to inheritance, which is firstborn. Yes. Reuben was that firstborn, and his papa tells him that he's not going to have preeminence for defiling his father's bed. He slept with his father's concubine. So that firstborn double portion now went to Joseph via his sons Ephraim and Manasseh, whose blessing we just heard. Next on the list is Simeon and Levi. Simeon and Levi are brothers. This is what Jacob says to them. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are implements of violence. Let my soul not enter into their counsel. Let not my glory be united with their assembly. Because in their anger they killed men, and in their self-will they hamstrung oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it is strong, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them amongst Jacob, and scatter them in Israel. So notice the common denominator so far between Reuben, Simeon, and Levi. What does Papa Israel have a problem with? Lack of self-control, violence, yes. Reuben can't keep little Ruby in check. Simeon and Levi were quick to shed blood. And it says, in their self-will they hamstrung oxen, not according to God's will. They took matters in their own hands. And we've already seen over and over what happens in these battles when Yahweh's people get ahead of him, and instead of following his lead. There's always some sort of negative consequence. They lose men, they get defeated, or Yahweh in some way shows them his displeasure. In this case, what does Jacob say about Simeon and Levi? I will divide them amongst Jacob and scatter them in Israel. Which brings us to what we read in Joshua 14:4. For the sons of Joseph were two tribes, and Manasseh and Ephraim, and they did not give a portion to the Levites in the land except cities to live in, with their pasture lands for their livestock and for their property. For Levi specifically, even though this was a consequence pronounced by his father, there's also a unique blessing weaved into this by Yahweh. There's a redemption in it too. Remember what I said earlier when I mentioned that Yahweh will simultaneously address sin in the same action as he brings about the blessing. Like the fact that bringing his people into the promised land also involved purging the wickedness that's currently in the land. And we saw that with the life of Joseph as his brothers intended harm, and Yahweh used it to save countless lives from famine. We also saw that this served as a preview of what would happen with Yeshua, our Messiah. Clearly, the execution of Yeshua appeared pretty grim at first, but we don't even want to imagine what would have happened if he didn't do that. So we're going to see this redemption in the tribe of Levi too. One redeeming factor of Levi's actions when he and his brother Simeon took out their vengeance on the men of Shechem, as misguided as those actions were, is a desire for justice to deal with the problem of evil. And Yahweh can take that and redirect it for his purposes, which he does a lot. The tribe of Levi doesn't get territory like the other tribes, except in verse 3 of chapter 14, cities to live in, with their pasture lands for their livestock and for their property. And as pronounced by Papa Jacob, they were scattered among the other tribes, and they're going to be receiving 48 Levitical cities. Those cities are going to be scattered throughout the land within the territories of their brothers. 6 of those cities are what? Cities of refuge. Yes. That's in Numbers 35. These are cities where if somebody accidentally kills somebody else or causes the death of another person, they can escape to these cities in order to keep them safe from the people that may be trying to get vengeance, and also to ensure that they're not killed before they get a fair trial. And it's as if Yahweh is saying, you know, Levi, the vengeance that you enacted on Shechem, I'm going to use your tribe specifically to protect the people from vengeance. Not only that, but the tribe of Levi as a whole is tasked with various temple duties to address sin in general among the people of Israel. That justice that Levi wanted, his tribe will help in facilitating. The difference is that it's going to be Yahweh-led. So what other redemption do we find in the tribe of Levi? They get all the tithes. Yahweh's portion becomes their portion. The tithes brought to Yahweh are given to the Levites as their portion. And the priests judge and settle disputes for Israel. That's Deuteronomy 17. Okay, let's talk about Caleb. And I'll take a break. Actually, I normally stop between chapter breaks, but I spent a lot of time on 14, so I'll stop here for a second. Any comments, questions, observations, Jacob?
Um, I had never caught the servant being gored for 30 shekels of silver, but it's interesting. And when you said that, I immediately thought, well, wait a minute. Psalm 22, verse 12. Many bulls have surrounded me, strong ones of Bashan have encircled me.
There you go. That didn't even come to mind.
So, and the interesting thing is connecting to last week is that Bashan is around Mount Hermon. So it's a reference to other entities attacking the good son and goring him to death. So he's being pierced on the mountain there, and that's a great catch, Umberto, for the price of a slave being gored to death. That was good.
Any other insights or questions? Okay, let's talk about Caleb. I won't spend as much time on him, FYI. But verses 6 through 15 in Joshua 14. Then the sons of Judah drew near to Joshua in Gilgal, and Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite said to him, You know, the word which Yahweh spoke to Moses, the man of God, concerning you and me in Kadesh Barnea. I was 40 years old when Moses the servant of Yahweh sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land, and I brought word back to him as it was in my heart. Nevertheless, my brothers who went up with me made the heart of the people melt with fear. But I followed Yahweh my God fully. So Moses swore on that day, saying, Surely the land on which your foot has trodden will be an inheritance to you and to your children forever, because you have followed Yahweh my God fully. I'll keep reading a little more. So now, behold, Yahweh has let me live, just as he spoke, these 45 years from the time that Yahweh spoke this word to Moses, when Israel walked in the wilderness. So now, behold, I am 85 years old today. I'm still as strong today as I was in the day Moses sent me. As my strength was then, so my strength is now, for war and for going out and coming in. So now, give me this hill country about which Yahweh spoke on that day. For you heard on that day that Anakim were there. With great fortified cities, perhaps Yahweh will be with me, and I will dispossess them as Yahweh has spoken. So Joshua blessed him and gave Hebron to Caleb the son of Jephunneh for an inheritance. Therefore, Hebron became the inheritance of Caleb the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, until this day, because he fully followed Yahweh, the God of Israel. Now the name of Hebron was formerly Kiriath Arba, for Arba was the greatest man among the Anakim. Then the land was quiet from war. So who came to Joshua in Gilgal? It says the sons of Judah. Yes. Judah is one of the 12 tribes of Israel. And Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, said to Joshua, I was 40 years old when myself and my brothers, fellow people of Israel, were sent in by Moses to spy out the promised land. I brought back word as it was in my heart. However, my brothers who were with me made the people fearful, but I followed Yahweh, my God, fully. So pause for a sec. Caleb's inserted here as one of the sons of Judah, and Numbers 13:6 also affirms this. And he calls the other Israelites who spied out the land with him my brothers. But it also says he's the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite. Genesis 15:18 through 21. On that day, Yahweh cut a covenant with Abram, saying, To your seed I have given this land, from the river of Egypt as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, the Kenite and the Kenizzite, and the Cadmonite, and the Hittite and the Perizzite, and the Rephaim, and the Amorite, and the Canaanite, and the Girgashite, and the Jebusite. So I think it's fairly safe to presume here that his father was a Gentile grafted into Israel, who married a woman from the tribe of Judah. Caleb's a legit son of the tribe of Judah. Regardless of how he got there, he rightfully considers himself part of Israel. The God of Israel is his God, and he's been faithful. In fact, only him and Joshua were faithful among the how many spies? 12. One from each tribe. Numbers 13. So we have a man from a people who are destined to be removed from the promised land, the Kenizzites, who Yahweh redeems and makes a part of his own people, Israel. This man becomes more part of Israel than other, what we would call full-blooded Israelites. Numbers 14:24. But my servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit and has followed me fully, I will bring into the land which he entered, and his seed shall take possession of it. 45 years after he showed that unwavering faith, he says he's just as strong as back then. He's 85 years old now. Joshua 14:11. I am still as strong today as I was in the day Moses sent me. As my strength was then, so my strength is now, for war and for going out and coming in. Imagine hearing that from an 85-year-old. All right. Verses 13 through 15. So Joshua blessed him and gave Hebron to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, for an inheritance. Therefore, Hebron became the inheritance of Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, until this day, because he fully followed Yahweh, the God of Israel. And then it tells you about the former name of Hebron, and then it ends with the sentence, then the land was quiet from war. Hebron is the same place where Abraham buried his wife, Sarah. And it's also the same city where Yahweh sends David, and where the men of Judah came to David to anoint him as king. So the gospel is all weaved into this. The first verse of the Gospel of Matthew, Yeshua, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Now, the name of Hebron was formerly Kiriath Arba, for Arba was the greatest man among the Anakim. Then the land was quiet from war. There's the gospel again. In the same method that Yahweh uses to bring blessings, we see sin displaced and removed, abominations and wickedness destroyed, and it results in peace. This is from Micah chapter 4. Now, context, first verse says, now it will be that in the last days. Verse 2, and many nations will come and say, come and let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh. I think it's written here. Yep. Come and let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh and to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may instruct us from his ways and that we may walk in his paths. For from Zion will go forth the law, the Torah, and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. And he will judge between many peoples and will render decisions for mighty, distant nations. And they will hammer their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, and never again will they learn war. So I'll pause one more time before we go into chapter 15. Any questions or insights? Lindsay?
Hi, this is Lindsay. Um, I was with you on like who is Caleb, so that was kind of fun to look into, and I did find that a similar thing as you is like he was a foreigner or from foreigner lineage that had been grafted in or brought in to the tribe of Judah, which was interesting. And then when I looked up his name in Hebrew means dog. And so I kind of sat with that for a minute, and then almost immediately the passage in Matthew about the Canaanite woman coming to Yeshua. I'll read it because it's Matthew 15, verses 21 through 28. And going away from there, Yeshua withdrew into the district of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and began to cry out, saying, have mercy on me, Lord, son of David. My daughter is cruelly demon-possessed. But he did not answer her a word. And his disciples came and were pleading with him, saying, "Send her away, because she keeps shouting at us." But he answered and said, "I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and was bowing down before him, saying, "Lord, help me." And he answered and said, "It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." But she said, "Yes, Lord, but even the dogs feed on the crumbs which fall from their master's table." Then Yeshua answered and said to her, "O woman, your faith is great. It shall be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed at once. So it was interesting because I wasn't even thinking that. And then I was reminded, okay, here's this Canaanite woman who's not of the people. She's not of the tribes. And she's coming before Yeshua, the Savior, saying, "Bring me into your fold. Bring me into your flock. I need to be with you." And so, and her faith is what grafts her in. And I thought that's like what was happening here with Caleb, where then it says, like you're reading in verse 14, therefore Hebron became the inheritance of Caleb, the son of Jehudah the Kenizzite, until this day, because he fully followed Yahweh, the God of Israel. So again, another picture of like just constantly given to us throughout the scriptures, all throughout, that here's a set of our people, and then here are the ones that are just coming and saying, "Give me the crumbs, like I'll eat the crumbs." So
Amen.
that's pretty cool.
Thank you. Victor?
I'm paying attention to the fact that my name is Victor, specifically pointed out that he was a Kenizzite, which tells us that all that Yahweh has is not just for the 12 tribes, but like Lindsay was saying, all those who cling to him, all who call upon the name of Yahweh shall be saved. So they put that in there for a specific reason to point out to us that no, it's not just those 12 tribes, but those of us that are grafted in. And again, as Travers says, we see this pattern over and over and over again. And each time we see it, I think it just reinforces for us that even though we're sitting here in Roseville, California, United States, we are Israel because he made a way for us.
Thank you for saying that. Okay. Anyone else? Trevor?
I do not have it all figured out, including on how to turn on the mic. The part here that I don't want to skip over for myself, and I don't have it all figured out. I do have a former mentor in my life. I'll even say his name because he's so good at what he does, Gary Shoemaker. And he would used to always say, like, "You have no idea. You have no idea." And he said it emphatically. And the reason he'd say it is that Yeshua came to make a way for us to have an eternal relationship with him. He has conquered sin and death. This is the part that me as an evangelical, I got it. I mean, this is good. And I'm so glad. There's these powers and principalities that I cannot fight. I need the Lord. But that's where he would say things like the no idea part is, look at these Anakim. These are giants. This is Hebron. All this story is all weaving together that I haven't got it all figured out yet. But not only does Yeshua redeem us, he is in the cosmos. He is fighting these giants, these powers and principalities, fallen angels. It's not just that he is conquering sin and death, which is huge, the biggest, but it's also that he is disciplining the entire universe that has fallen out of order into a disarray, and he has conquered even that. And I think to myself, you have the you have the Caleb factor, but then you have the Joshua factor, and how Caleb plays into the storyline, and that I see Yeshua in Joshua, but I also see Yeshua in Caleb and having this heart, this, and I don't know how it fits in all of it together, but there's like almost like Yeshua and the Spirit. I don't know. I think about, I think from the very beginning of Joshua, I said, I'm looking at this narrative this time through the lens of Yeshua returning and bringing us into the millennial kingdom and all the facets of that. And not only will there be a second Exodus where we are somehow transported to the promised land, to the mountain of our God, but there's also a disciplining of the nations that will happen at that time that I still haven't fully figured out, but I see it through these Anakim, through Hebron, and through the land that was quiet from war. Because when he establishes that kingdom, after he cleans house, the land will then be quiet from war. Haven't pieced it all together, but you've given me enough things to think about. Thank you.
Okay. Jacob's got one.
Yeah, so just looking at that part there, because it's the name Caleb, it's a two-parter, and so it can mean dog, Kalev, or it can be like-hearted, Kalev. So it's almost like the scripture is intentionally doing a word play, that he gets called a dog as a result of his mixed ancestry, but he becomes wholehearted because he completely followed the Lord. So, and it's just this interesting wordplay that happens there, that he's like, he gets teased like Yeshua, like, oh, we know who our dad is. What about you? But he ends up being the one who knows his father's will the most and does it. And it's just cool because he ends up taking over Hebron. So he ends up taking over the Anakim location, which is where the greatest of them were at, because that was his heart in the first place. So it's like he gets bragging rights because he's not afraid of giants. And then it's Hebron where, like you had said, David rules after he killed Goliath, and some years later, that's where the men make him king. So it's just like God is wanting you to be this. If you follow him with your whole heart, he's going to take care of you. And it's just kind of cool. And I don't remember with Goliath. Does he say, "Am I a dog to be run off with a stick"? I think he does. So I think that if that is in there, it's even more ironic because the guy who is named Dog is the one who ran off Goliath's ancestors like a dog.
Yep.
So you just kind of look at that stuff and you're like, oh, that's not on accident at all. That's totally on purpose.
So what are the two words that are the word?
So it's Kelev, which is a dog, and then Kalev, which is like heart or whole heart.
So can you explain to everyone that there's the root word in Hebrew, and that's just
Oh, yeah. So Hebrew words are what are called triconsonantal. So what's that mean is they have three consonants in the word. So Kalev would be Kaf, Lamed, Bet. And then depending upon how you change the vowels in between those three consonants can change the meaning of a word. In Hebrew, we didn't get the vowel pointers until many years after the original language was created. So a Hebrew reader of the original book of Joshua wouldn't have had vowel pointers. They would have just seen those three letters, and then they would have known from their own vocabulary that there's a word play going on. We don't see it, but the readers would have seen it, and so they see dog, but they also see like-hearted. So I guess you can look at Caleb as he's kind of like that loyal pit bull that ain't going down without a fight.
There you go.
Does that make sense, Trevor? Did that break it down right
Yep.
for them? Okay.
Patty?
Hi, I'm Patty. Just making another connection because when Lindsay mentioned dog, I immediately thought of Gideon, the story of Gideon, and how um, in Judges 7, he was told to pick 300 men, and God told him, "You shall put everyone who laps the water with his tongue as a dog laps in one group, and everyone who kneels down to drink in another." And so those were the 300 mighty warriors that he took with him.
The stuff you guys find. It's awesome. Okay. Anyone else? All right. We should be able to pick up the pace here. These other chapters are shorter. There's a lot in here, so let's see what we can pull out of them. Chapter 15 is Judah's inheritance. So let's first read what Jacob pronounced over Judah. And to give you the point of this now, Yeshua the Messiah is from this tribe. So just hear this as being proclaimed over Yeshua himself. Genesis 49, verses 8 through 12. Judah, as for you, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down to you. Judah is a lion's whelp, or lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He crouches, he lies down as a lion, and as a lioness, who dares rouse him up? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until Shiloh comes. The throne shall not depart from Judah until Messiah comes. And to him shall be the obedience of the peoples, which we just read a glimpse of that in Micah chapter 4. He ties his foal to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. The king of Zion, who is righteous and endowed with salvation, humble, riding on a donkey, prophesied in Zechariah 9:9, is also Yeshua's triumphal entry in Matthew 21. He washes his garments in wine and his robes in the blood of grapes, which speaks of God's coming vengeance, Isaiah 63. Again, we can't separate salvation from the destruction of the wicked. It's part of the same process. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. I could read Joshua 15, 1 through 12. There's a lot of difficult pronunciations here. Let's see. Now, I'll start reading and see how long it's taking me. Now the lot for the tribe of the sons of Judah, according to their families, reached the border of Edom, southward to the wilderness of Zin, at the far end toward the south. And their south borders was from the lower end of the Salt Sea, from the bay that turns to the south. Then it went out southward to the ascent of Akrabim, and passed on to Zin, and went up by the south of Kadesh Barnea, and continued to Hezron, and went up to Adar, and turned about to Karka. And it passed on to Asmon, and went out to the brook of Egypt, and the border ended at the sea. This shall be your south border. And the east border was the Salt Sea, as far as the mouth of the Jordan. And the border of the north side was from the bay of the seas at the mouth of the Jordan. Then the border went up to Beth Hoglah, and passed by on the north of Beth Arabah. And the border went up the stone of Bohan, the son of Reuben. Then the border went up to Debir from the valley of Achor, and turned northward toward Gilgal, which is opposite the ascent of Adumim, which is on the south of the valley. And the border continued to the waters of En Shemesh, and it ended at En Rogel. Then the border went up the valley of Ben Hinnom to the slope of the Jebusite on the south, that is Jerusalem. And the border went up to the top of the mountain, which is before the valley of Hinnom, to the west, which is at the end of the valley of Rephaim toward the north. From the top of the mountain, the border curved to the spring of the waters of Nephtoah and proceeded to the cities of Mount Ephron. Then the border curved to Bala, that is Kiriath Jearim. Then the border turned about from Bala westward to Mount Seir and continued to the slope of Mount Jearim on the north, that is Chesalon or Chesalon, I don't know how to say it, and went down to Beth Shemesh and continued through Timnah. Then the border went out to the side of Ekron northward. Then the border curved on to Shikaron and passed on to Mount Bala and went out to Jabneel, and the border ended at the sea. And the west border was at the great sea, even its coastline. This is the border around the sons of Judah according to their families. The first 12 verses are boundaries. Reaching the border of Edom, southward to the wilderness of Zin at the far end toward the south. It includes this territory for Judah, includes the wilderness of Zin, which is the same territory where the children of Israel spent 40 years after the Exodus. The very same areas of your life where your faith was tested, the same areas where you experience hardship and struggle. Remember, Levi, that vengeance of yours, I'm going to use your terry to protect others from vengeance. Your own testimony, you can speak into the lives of people who are struggling with the very same things that Yahweh's redeemed you from. Don't try to discard your story. Don't be afraid of how Yahweh is going to use it. He's not wasteful. Every scar can tell a story. Notice Yeshua kept his scars after his resurrection. Judah's territory included Timnah, where we have the situation with Judah himself and Tamar, where Judah was ready to surrender his responsibilities, his authority, and identity. Yahweh brings it back full circle. It's like he's saying, you may have forgotten or tried to forget who you are, but I know why I brought you forth into this world, and I'm much more steadfast than you are stubborn. Verses 13 through 19 are Caleb's inheritance. Our boy Caleb is 85 years old here, and he dispossesses the 3 sons of Anak, as Trevor mentioned earlier. These guys are part of the Nephilim, the same people that struck fear into the children of Israel and caused their strength and faith to fail. Caleb said he's just as good to go for the battle as 40 years ago, and he means it. 45 years ago. Then he goes up against the inhabitants of Debir and puts out a challenge to his brethren. Whoever takes these guys out gets to marry my daughter. Say no more, fam. Uncle Othniel comes forward, captures the area, and marries Achsah, which should give you pause. However, Judges 1:13 says Othniel is the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother. Sounds like this is more of a marriage between cousins, which is unusual, but it's not prohibited according to the Torah as far as I can see, which would be Leviticus chapters 18 and 20. Verses 20 through 63, a long section there, lists over 100 cities. I think it was 112. They're grouped by region: the Negev, the Shephelah, hill country, and the wilderness, which is thorough, literal, personal, and prophetic, which I would have hoped, and I still hope, I still plan on doing it at some point, to have more time to really dig into all these in the future and see what picture is being painted here. But we know for sure that this is indeed happening. And one day in the future, the land will be fully part of Yeshua's kingdom. Every plot of land will belong to those that it's supposed to belong to. Ezekiel 37, verses 24 through 25. And my servant David will be king over them, and they will all have one shepherd, and they will walk in my judgments and keep my statutes and do them. They will inhabit the land that I gave to Jacob my servant, which your fathers inhabited, and they will inhabit it, and their sons and their sons' sons forever. And David my servant will be their prince forever. which is Yeshua, son of David from the tribe of Judah that we're talking about. Amos chapter 9, verse 11, going through verse 15. In that day I will raise up the fallen booth of David and wall up its breaches. I will also raise up its ruins and rebuild it as in the ancient days, that they may possess the remnant of Edom and all the nations who are called by my name, declares Yahweh who does this. Behold, days are coming, declares Yahweh, when the plowman will overtake the reaper, and the treader of grapes him who sows seed. When the mountains will drip sweet wine, and all the hills will melt. Also, I will restore the captivity of my people Israel, and they will rebuild the desolated cities and live in them. They will also plant vineyards and drink their wine, and make gardens and eat their fruit. I will also plant them on their land, and they will not again be uprooted from their land which I have given them, says Yahweh, your God. Any questions before we go to 16? Or comments? Or insights? Lindsay?
Okay, I haven't really processed this out because it literally just came to me now as we're kind of sitting here. But what I noticed is in 15, the first inheritance in detail that we're given is Judah, tribe of Judah. And then if you look at 16 and 17, we have the two of Joseph. So Judah first, then the two of Joseph, and then the rest of the tribes. So what popped into mind was this little phrase. I don't know where I've heard it or what, but it's just the little phrase of Judah goes first. So I kind of was just now kind of looking up, but in Judges chapter 1, verse 1 and 2. Now it happened after the death of Joshua that the sons of Israel asked of Yahweh, saying, who shall go up first for us against the Canaanites to fight against them? And Yahweh said, Judah shall go up. Behold, I have given the land into his hand. And then in Judges 20, let me find it. It was 20. Oh, yes, 20:18. Then the sons of Israel rose, went up to Bethel, and asked of God, and said, who shall go up for us to begin the battle against the sons of Benjamin? And Yahweh said, Judah shall begin it. So Judah's going first again. And isn't it when they were to like set up camp in the wilderness, the tabernacle, and then they were to take everything down and they were going to move camps, was it Judah that goes out first? Was it? Okay, thank you. And then I was thinking too, Zechariah 12, verse 7. Yahweh will also save the tents of Judah first, so that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem will not be magnified above Judah. And then I feel like in Revelation or somewhere around there, there's something about the house of Judah. Yah first comes for the house of Judah, and then for Joseph, which is those of us, the other 10 tribes grafted in, and the 10 tribes. So I don't know, I just keep hearing that Judah goes first, and then how interesting it is that the first tribe to be given their portion is Judah, and then the very next two are the sons of Joseph.
There's something interesting about that it's not in here, but I've been thinking about it. I just haven't said anything because I'd like to find something more concrete about it. You know, Yeshua, tribe of Judah, but Yeshua is also Yahweh. What went before the people as they were making their way through when they were crossing the Jordan? What went up ahead of them? The ark. How far ahead? There was a unit. I don't remember the unit, but it was 2,000. I'm just gonna say it. I'm not gonna tell you that's what it is, but it makes me wonder: could that be representative of 2,000 years? Yeshua going ahead of us, Judah going ahead. So just, I'm still processing that one. Travis got something.
That's kind of what we do here. We keep processing together. I never, other than Rahab and a genealogy, that gives me pause. Kind of maybe brings a little tear to my eye. But I never thought I would have had a tear today on the whole Timnah thing. Thank you. I know what happened in Timnah. Judah had a prostitute issue. And that's an embarrassing chapter. Like for me, there's certain parts of my own life that I really don't want to go back and visit. Little does everyone know, I haven't told them everything about me, and I'm probably not gonna. We have the things that we've done in our past that you just kind of go, I don't really want to relive what happened there. You can just kind of know that I have my stuff, you have your stuff. And to think that here's Judah, that part of his inheritance is that very spot. And that's why I cried. Because, I got things in my own life to think that what Yeshua is conquering is all that junk in my past that he's taking control of and will present it in some sense to me, but cleansed. And so I just want to say personally, I just never caught that before. And just knowing how Judah I am and mistakes I've made, and that I will be able to go to a place that Yahweh has cleansed and redeemed and conquered. Same for all my friends. Thank you.
It's interesting because I would imagine Judah knowing what territory he's going to get. He's probably honing in on Timnah, and I don't know if anybody else would have necessarily caught it. So it's like the things that Yahweh does for us can be deeply personal and mean way more to us than anybody else realizes. So that's interesting. Patty?
Hi, I'm sorry. It's Patty. And once again, when Lindsay was mentioning Judah, I thought of this is in Nahum 1:15, and it's a central verse that we use in Creation Gospel. And this is a reflection of what happens at the end of time as well. So Nahum 1:15, behold on the mountains the feet of him who brings good news, who announces peace. Celebrate your feasts, Judah. Pay your vows, for never again will the wicked one pass through you. He is eliminated completely. And the wicked one is known as the king of Babylon also.
Amen. Anyone else? Victor?
We find out in Judges that, excuse me, that by the time they go into the land, they cross the Jordan. This is like the third generation after leaving Egypt. So you have that first generation that died in the desert. And then in Judges, we find out that all of those who went to the land with Joshua, they had passed away. Then once they go across the Jordan, we're at the third generation. So I don't think that they were particularly thinking about that because they're two generations removed from, from Judah the man, it happening. And so going back to something, alluding to something that I said before, was that these stories are for us because it gives us the beauty and the benefit of hindsight, that we can place ourselves in their situations, but don't have to necessarily live through them, because we have the benefit of going, oh, here's what happened and here's how they messed up. I'm not going to make that mistake. You all know I have 4 children. I have 3 children that messed up, and I have a child who said, I'm never doing that. I'm never doing that, because that, I'm not going to say whether it's a he or she, But one of them saw the mistakes of the others and said, I'm never doing that. And they didn't. And so, again, the beauty of all of this is that we can look and go, okay, like with Joshua and Caleb, we got 10 people who said, no, we're not going into the land. And we have 2 who said, yeah, but he said we could. And so, anyway, that was just my comment. Judah is not a man at this stage. It's a tribe. And I think the tribe is 3 generations or 2 generations removed from what happened.
Yeah.
So
Good. 2 more.
Two things that came to mind. One is that Yeshua is the first fruits back to Elohim, and he's known as the Lion of Judah. The second is that it says the Torah will go out from Judah. Judah is my Torah giver. And in Isaiah chapter 2, it says that his Torah will go out to all the world. So for those reasons, I think they're interesting support for why Judah gets the first inheritance.
Amen.
Hey, Jacob. One of the ironies is that whose idea is it to sell Joseph into slavery? It's Judah. It's Judah's idea to sell him. And so the irony is that the Jews, not pejoratively, but just as a matter of fact, Yeshua is sold for the price of a slave by the Jews into the hands of a foreigner. And it's interesting that if you get to Ezekiel, because you cited Ezekiel 37, is that that's the same verse where it speaks of one for Judah, one for Joseph. And it's interesting to me that they become one in his hand because of the reproach between the two. That enmity between Judah and Joseph goes back to when they sold Joseph into slavery. So it reconciles this animosity isn't just between northern kingdom and southern kingdom. This actually has to do with the betrayal between brothers. And so God reconciles it at the end in Ezekiel 37 through the Redeemer. He redeems the relationship between an older brother and a younger brother because he wants to fix the family. I just think it's so interesting that it all comes back to family in Scripture. Always comes back to what Trevor says. He wants a home, a plot of land, and a house. He just wants his family and his children to live together in peace. And it's like the whole narrative we get in Scripture is how he's going to do that. I just thought it was interesting.
Brings to mind, I don't remember where it is, but it's, where it says like they and their household will be saved. It's like Yahweh works. He redeems the household as a whole unit. Yeah. Eli?
Just to piggyback on what Jacob was saying, and sort of the family drama that Scripture pulls out, there's Yahweh used the mediator between Joseph and Judah. Joseph being the oldest of his true love, Rachel, the one he loved the most, and it was the little brother of the family, Benjamin, who was used during the mediation and reconciliation between Joseph and his brothers. And during the new covenant, it's Paul from Benjamin who goes out to Ephraim as an apostle to the Gentiles to reconcile the family. So that throughout Scripture, you have these really deep interpersonal storylines and plot lines that are rich in value. And what brought to mind when Jacob brought that up.
Under which tribe does Jerusalem fall into? What territory? Is it Judah? Benjamin and Judah? All right. Depends on the map. The map I saw was Benjamin. I was just curious. I was connecting the Redeemer mediator thing. Interesting. Thank you.
And you know, it is Benjamin who goes, instead of going with his brother in Ephraim in the north, he stays back with Judah to the south. And so there's that sort of mediation there that plays between north and south, Jew and Gentile.
Benjamin's inside of Judah, so it's almost indistinguishable. There you go. Okay. All right, I think we can make our way through 16. I can make it pretty quick. Ephraim's inheritance. It starts with the lot for the sons of Joseph. Joseph's other son, Manasseh, had two separate but connected plots of territory, half east of the Jordan, the other half west of the Jordan. This son, Ephraim, has his territory all west of the Jordan River. The lot for the sons of Joseph went out from the Jordan at Jericho, which I noticed something here. You know how, especially in like little kids' Bibles, among the central, because it's not, not everything that's in these grown-up Bibles. You just have the stories, the main stories that people hone in on. Among those central stories are the Exodus from Egypt, Jericho, and of course, the cross, which is, totally great that if they funnel it down to those, fine. But notice that all these are starting points. From these places is the start of a journey. You go from there to where Yahweh says to go. We like those stories in particular, because Yahweh really steps in and let the enemy have it. But then what happens next? Trust, obey, take action. Yeah, Jericho went down with some shouts and marching around it. But you better not take anything from it that you weren't supposed to, because the next battle at Ai or Ai, unless you purge the evil from among you, you're going to lose. But if you do purge the evil from among you, Yahweh is going to give Ai into your hands. But that battle is with swords. In case you're not tracking, that's chapters 6 through 8 of Joshua. And if you notice, both at the ends of chapter 15 and chapter 16 here in Joshua, we see who was not dispossessed, because Israel couldn't, which means the job's not over. Last week, Jacob, you mentioned how Goliath had 4 brothers, which adds up to 5 giants. David had 5 stones. It only took 1 to take out Goliath, which means he still had 4 stones left. And later on, David's men would take out his brothers, taking out these 5 giant Philistine men from Gath, which would be found in 2 Samuel, chapters 21 and 1 Chronicles 20. Then we have the 5 kings of the Amorites in Joshua 10 that united to try and take out Israel. One of those being Adoni-Zedek, his name meaning king of righteousness, who happened to be king of Jerusalem of all places. And what happens to these kings? They were captured, killed, hung on 5 trees. And we know that Yeshua was captured, hung on a cross and killed. And he, being the true king of Jerusalem, gets the king treatment. What else happened to the 5 kings? Yep. They were brought down from those trees where they were hung. They were thrown into a cave, and the cave was covered with stones. And that same cave earlier, before they died, they had hidden. It was also covered with stones. And they assigned men to keep watch over it, which should sound familiar. Yeshua got the king's treatment. He was hung on a cross, body taken down, put in a cave, put a large stone over it, and the men were assigned to guard the entrance. The difference is that this true king, Messiah Yeshua, overcame death itself and came back out of that cave alive. He's the true king of righteousness. He will reign from Jerusalem, but all the land will be inherited and cleared out of his enemies and their wicked practices. So until then, we need to stop leaving traces of the evil one in your life. Get rid of anything that needs to go. Yes, Yahweh's going to complete the process that he started in you, but you can't pull away when he's trying to do so, and you definitely can't turn back. I'll read 16 real quick. I'm just going to read it for what it is, and then I'm going to finish with something. Then the lot for the sons of Joseph went out from the Jordan at Jericho, that's the starting point, to the waters of Jericho on the east into the wilderness, going up from Jericho through the hill country to Bethel. And it went out from Bethel to Luz. Interesting, in Spanish that means light. I don't know if there's anything else in there. But they passed on to the border of the Archites at Ataroth. Then it went down westward to the territory of the Japhletites, as far as the territory of lower Beth Horon, even to Gezer, and it ended at the sea. So the sons of Joseph, Manasseh, and Ephraim received their inheritance. Now this was the territory of the sons of Ephraim according to their families. The border of their inheritance eastward was Ataroth, Adar, as far as upper Beth Horon. Then the border went westward at Michmetath on the north. This is more difficult than 15. And the border turned about eastward to Tanath Shiloh and passed on beyond it to the east of Genoa. And it went down from Genoa to Ataroth and Nara and reached Jericho and came out at the Jordan. From Tapua, the border continued westward to the brook of Kana, and it ended at the sea. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the sons of Ephraim according to their families, together with the cities which were set apart for the sons of Ephraim in the midst of the inheritance of the sons of Manasseh, all the cities with their villages, but they did not dispossess the Canaanites who lived in Gezer. So the Canaanites lived in the midst of Ephraim to this day, and they became forced laborers. Just like the book of Numbers, this, and I'm glad you brought it up last week, Jacob, that it's not just a story, it's the reason all those details are there is because this is literally a guide to tell you who's getting what. It's telling you specifically who got what back then, but it's also a guide for in the future to say, hey, this is a real territories, this is real places, this is actually going to happen. But if we're going to get there, we need to not shy away. Luke 9:62. But Yeshua said to him, no one, after putting his hand to the plow and looking back, is fit for the kingdom of God. But we also have this. Philippians 1:6. For I am confident of this very thing, that he who began a good work in you will perfect it until the day of Yeshua Messiah. So as messy as the journey is, as painful and difficult, even the areas of our lives that we don't want to look at, I have plenty of those myself. And I'm still working on that with Yahweh, where I have to constantly ask his forgiveness, not because he's withholding it from me, but because shame or guilt continues to resurface. There's those remnants of the world that are still left to pull out. So until that day comes, we put our hand to the plow, we don't look back, and we have the faith of Caleb, who could be treated as a dog and saying, nope, you don't belong to us. You're not really part of us. You're a half-blood. But no, he has more faith than anybody else. He says, this is my God. These are my brothers. I belong here, and so do we. So I'll end with that.
Don't get used to it. All 9 minutes here, 8 minutes. Any other questions for Umberto or thoughts that you might have? Michael?
I'm going to use my background in quantum physics for just a second to just say what a fantastic aspect that was in your presentation. But we have to remember that the land and the people can never be separated. And God makes that so clear. And if we go back to Noah, and then in Genesis chapters 10 and 11, we see such a reflection of what when Peleg is born, and we have all of these corruption that are happening. There's the land is also given as an inheritance at that time. And I think if we look at these cities that you were mentioning and the way that these borders are and the way that they are described, and we overlay the names from Genesis 10 and 11 over what you just described here with the battles and the trials and the tribulations that the tribes go through, we find an incredible explanation of balance and redemption at every single point. Yeshua, in his 70-week ministry, every single point that he goes to is balanced to show the takanat from in other words, the man-made laws, what they were doing right in their own eyes that they thought were beyond the 613 laws, beyond the observance of the feasts and the festivals. Every single act of Yeshua in every single location is designed to bring redemption and wholeness, and that hasn't stopped. So I really appreciate what you did, and thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
bringing that up.
So you had asked about the significance of Bethel and Luz. What's interesting is in this morning, our Torah portion is that's exactly where Jacob saw the vision of the ladder going up into heaven, and standing on top of it was God. And what's interesting is that Luz means almond tree. What does the menorah look like? An almond tree. And he changes the name of Luz to Bet El, which means house of God. So you have an almond tree in the house of God as the light pointing the way. And Aaron's staff is a budded almond. So it's like all of these things, they're reminding you of what's going on there. And so with Joseph gets the possession of Bethel, the house of God. If Yeshua or Joseph is a foreshadowing of Yeshua, who's put in control of God's house, the Father's house? Yeshua. So it's all of these things. In Zechariah, you have the almond trees that are on either side, supporting this one central thing. So there's this whole wordplay that just keeps getting poured into, and then he says he shall be called a branch, and all of these other things that keep going on. You're just like, to your point and what you'd brought today, it's just great to all these little things that we get to find as we go through the scriptures.
Which makes me wonder now. I wonder why Spanish decided luz of all words to be light. Now it's going to bug me. Cool. Anybody else?
Shabbat Shalom. This is Deanna. I just feel in my heart right now to the person who is online and who comes across, and either this has been shared or you're there and you're seeking. Yes, the Father is so deliberate. And now just sitting here today for us, as others have said, the message is for us. And the layers, and I just feel such a blessing. And Patty and I were just sitting here saying, we're gonna have to go back and rewatch this. There's so much, and it's such a blessing in that we get to be here today and walking out and having that holy convocation to just be in His Word and study it, and it's so rich. And I'm even at this point, in my life, to be able to come into this walk and into the fullness of his truth and His whole Word, and how deliberate Yahuwah is, and what He shows just at the beginning, because the gospel starts in the beginning and all the way through in the Tanakh, everything into the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament. How blessed we are that we are here. It is not by mistake. It is deliberate. And just as his word is deliberate, it is so deliberate. And I just am so thankful. I just pray that we would just soak that in, and that everything that everyone has shared, that we get to be a part of this, and we get to learn and seek and study his whole truth, his whole word. And again, just that we get to learn from one another, and just the richness of it, of our Father and what he has shared with us.
Amen.
My name's Joel. There's a lot of times that I'll be driving thinking about you people, about this family. And this morning I was thinking about this. I was thinking, the youth, the young people, I wish there were more here so they can hear what I'm going to say. I'm going to ask you to really, and I don't want to question parents' ideas or that sort of thing, but if they are within the Bible, keep consistent. Okay, the world is out here waving, going, oh, da, 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 da. And your children at 11, 12 years old are looking at the world going, yeah, I'm going to do that. And you're going, no, don't do that. You know, and this is a battle. The enemy is fighting for our kids. Okay, I'm going to be blunt. This is warfare, and we have to win. The way we're going to win it is by making sure it's not beating the children with a stick. Okay, it's not telling them you will follow the Bible. You show them with patience and guidance. I had that in my life when I think I accepted the Lord when I was 8 or 9 years old and became a Christian. And my mom, my entire life, we did not get along about everything. But I always would sit back and weigh what she was trying to get me to do. And I'm going to tell you, this many years later, and she passed away only 7 years ago. It's not fondness for her memories. She raised me up in such a way that one of her favorite saying is she could tell I would never lie to her, because she's right. I changed my behavior to fit what would be acceptable in the Bible. And like I said, it was never a cut and dry black and white thing. Even in the 70s and 80s, it was never black and white, cut and dry. It still isn't. I have done ever since I was a teenager. I have ran close to 55,000 miles. Okay, I'm a marathon runner. I'm semi-retired. That takes a lot of time, a lot of endurance, but also mental energy to get out there. It would be raining outside, and I'd throw my rain gear and go out for a run. It'd be 105 degrees outside. I'd take off most of my clothes and go for a run. But it was the mind, and that's what I'm getting to, kind of a big circle here with our youth. They're in 1 Corinthians 2:8 and 16. 1 Corinthians 2:8 talks about if the leaders of the time of Jesus' crucifixion would have known what he was going to do for entire of humanity, Satan would not have made the leaders kill him. Okay, it was the enemy in these leaders. That's where the warfare comes in. But Christ died for a purpose, and this even goes back to Joseph's being kept alive and what happened with him. The battles are there, no matter who you are, no matter where you are. This is why when I listen to you guys before I come here, and I listened all the way my drive here. Don't give up, because seriously, what you're trying to lay out, and this is where I don't want to sound rude, but we're animals, okay? So what happens is, if your son or daughter see me in the mall and they see me going, let's say yelling at somebody like, I'm gonna fight them, they're gonna go, Mom, doesn't he go to our church? You got to think about everything around the way atmosphere you I guess the word would be procure. Whatever atmosphere you procure. And I wish that the young people were here, because I would really like to talk to them to not give up on you. Okay? Because I'm going to tell you what, and you people have kids, especially 12, 13 years old. The kids want to give up on you just as well. It's a two-way street. But that division is where the enemy wants to break up the body. Okay? The enemy wants our children not to progress. Back when I was 12 or 13, and my mom was watching me do some real wonky things, she kept consistent. I will tell you this. I vividly remember she kept consistent. But that consistency also is why I'm sitting here this many years later. And then also the one thing I wanted to share with the youth, that I'm excited about finding you guys, okay? Even though I'm not able to get to a lot of the events, I'm excited because I think if the church as a whole would sit down and the Protestants and the Jews would sit down as a whole and shut the heck up and listen to this, they would realize, I'm sorry, it's going to sound rude, we are in the right place. Being a Messianic Jewish person and practicing this is the right place because we're recognizing that there's continuity from the Old Testament to the New Testament. A lot of the Jewish beliefs, is only Old Testament. And the minute you start talking about the New Testament of Jesus, they're like, la, 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 and they don't want to hear it. A lot of today's Protestant people don't want to hear about the Old Testament. But they don't, that's because the enemy doesn't want them to learn lessons from the Old Testament. And they're there. So it's mostly encouraging. Like I said, I listen to this when I'm all the way here, and I just what you have to each person that has their lesson to come up here. I appreciate it. I do listen to them even if I'm not here, and I just want to say thank you. And you guys don't give up on your children, please, please. Them dark night, them times. I'm even going to go as far as if they come home drunk, and they're 16 years old or they're 17 years old, that does not make them a horrible person. That means the enemy went, come here, come on, let's go get drunk. Because of their mind, I'm putting a bunch of stuff, lessons together about the mind, the spirit mind and the Christian mind, that's what rules us. And there's a forever battle in that about the enemy wants your children, they wanted me to go towards the fleshly mind and away from the spirit mind. I know that's a long, I just had to share those things though. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.